I'd like to call the November 8th Committee of the Whole meeting to start at 1 o'clock. And I have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded by Dr. French and Kate Darby. Ms. Darby, do you want to vote?
Yes, I'm figuring out how to vote via board docs, but I'm not there yet. So yes, I vote in favor.
Okay.
Sorry.
You'll do it. Okay, great. Okay, that motion passes. The first thing on our agenda is public comments. We do have 2 in-person public comments. Are we ready? Okay, thank you, Michael. The first person is Ms. Cheryl Cromwell.
Hello, everyone. I am Cheryl Cromwell. Excuse me. And I am the Deputy Director for Charleston Rise. And I'm the parent of a former student of CCSD who graduated in June. Yay. But I moved my son 9 times throughout his time with CCSD because I wanted the best environment that would meet his needs as it changed throughout the years. And I didn't feel the assembly line was the best option for him. I just wanted a better option. So my desires were not unique and are not unique. In fact, it forms the basis for the work that we do at Charleston Rise, educating parents on how to advocate for their kids within the schools or at the district level, knowing that they have options and how to determine which option best suits their student, understanding test scores, and what those test scores mean. Parents have been looking for better options for their children. That's why they've transferred them. Those who can, they may not have verbalized what they want, but they have shown you through their actions. Rise is standing here today giving voice to those actions and parents' desires. This new policy around schools of innovation is what parents have been asking for. I stand before you today strongly encouraging you to move forward with the IHBHE Schools of Innovation policy, allowing individual schools to create the best academic environment for their students, as opposed to sending them through the assembly line or having a parent move their child and drive across district to find the best option, is a huge step in the right direction, especially for acceleration zone schools, where proficiency rates in reading and math are 14% and 11%, compared to 49% and 47% district-wide.
Thank you, Ms. Cromwell.
Thank you. Please vote in favor of the IHBHE.
Thank you. The next person that we have is Ms. Laurel Cockfield. Okay, so it doesn't look like she is in attendance. I'll take a moment to summarize the public comments that we received. We did receive 7 public comments that were submitted online. They were all pertaining to either masks or the Schools of Innovation policy, both of which we'll be taking up tonight. Thank you so much for your public comments, and don't forget that you can always submit them online or sign up to come in person. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report next.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dangerfield, for displaying the slides for the superintendent's report. I'm going to move quickly into the second slide, which shows the latest DHE metrics. We're delighted that we are in the low spread category in Charleston County for the 2nd week running. The next slide gives a little more detail on that. Our overall rating, as I said, is low. Our incident rate is at 173.6 per 100,000, which puts us in the medium range. Our trend rate is low and our positive test rate is low at 3.8%, which is significantly less than the last time I reported to you on October 25th. The report for the week prior that I gave on October 25th was 5.3%. So there at the bottom of the page, we see language from the board's policy ADD, and of course, the board will decide today whether you want to implement the language that's in this policy or choose some other option. The next slide shows the COVID positive cases by week in Charleston County schools. We are delighted that for the first time in many months, we have only 38 cases among about 50,000 students and teachers together, students and staff together. So that's fewer than 50 cases in our school district, and that is very, very good news. On the next slide, we simply revisit the October 11th board action. You, at that time, voted to extend the face mask requirement for 30 days through November 12th, and you asked us to work with public health experts to develop guidelines to inform mask decisions for the remainder of the school year. So on Saturday, we received what the verbiage that's in italics on the rest of that page from MUSC back to Business Division. They indicate that on the spectrum of safety, the medical evidence shows the safest to the least safe groups are from vaccinated outdoors to the gamut of unvaccinated indoors as the highest risk. They refer to their performance indicators that they publish. Right now, they're showing 6 of 7 of their performance indicators as green. Now, that's consistent with DHEC. And then the bottom line says, it is reasonable to unmask when COVID-19 indicators show low risk in the community. As COVID-19 risk rises, it is reasonable to mask higher risk populations, such as unvaccinated students. The one thing we want to point out is that for those who are not fully vaccinated and who do not wear a face mask, there are some differences in whether or not someone has to quarantine. And Mr. Barowie will go into a little more detail about that as we turn to the next slide. Mr. Barowie?
Thank you, Dr. Bosway. Just to close that last portion of the conversation, you all are probably aware of the DHEC guidance that says if you're within 3 to 6 foot, and this is for children, within 3 to 6 foot, and the person that is a close contact is masked, they do not have to be quarantined. This past week, we had just 29 students that were quarantined. The only point to be made by this is if the mask mandate is lifted, that 3 to 6 foot distance goes away for those that are unmasked as close contacts. And there's a chance that the number of quarantine would potentially increase if our numbers of positive stay the same. 2 points I've got on this slide, just to give you an update on where we stand with faculty booster shots. We have offered that at most of our campuses, most of our schools, in large part due to our local pharmacies that supported both flu shots and COVID boosters. And also, we've taken advantage of setting up separate events for bus drivers and for the district staff. So we've taken a pretty good approach to that. We've got a lot of booster shots delivered so far. We will offer a central site on the 19th of November. That will not be an early release day as reported as potential last time we all met. We are looking at a second site, possibly in West Ashley. We'll put out a survey to find out what the extent is of those that need the boosters at this point, but we can guarantee at least one site at this point, possibly 2 to close out the booster shots. We have got our setup complete for the 5 to 11-year-olds, offering that to parents or guardians that would like their children vaccinated. We've got 10 locations set up starting on the 15th of November. With the second dose that follows that process will be pushed into January to complete the shots across those 10 sites.
Thank you, Mr. Barowie. We're moving on now to talking about closing the readiness gap. That is the primary focus this year. While we don't want COVID to define us, we cannot deny the fact that COVID is influencing and impacting our practice. We want to look at three aspects of student achievement. The first is sharing with you the high level of the detail that was in your board packets on the second quarter progress. You adopted goals in April, so believe it or not, this is the end of the second quarter, starting from April forward. We want to talk about the priority. For us, the priority has to be improving life options for children of color and poverty. When we look at how well we're doing across many aspects of our system, we realize that's the one consistent area where we've not been able to change the system in ways that respond effectively to the needs of children of color and poverty. And then finally, we want to take a look at the feedback we received from various teacher and principal gatherings. So those are the three things we're going to look at now. The next slide, we'll look at the priorities. Just a reminder at the bottom of that slide, there are 6 possible rating categories. If we go clear to the far right, we see the white category would be a 0. That's not started. Red is not on track, and there are major impediments that we would assume if we were getting points, that would be a 1. The next lowest category is not on track, but there are minor issues. So none of our goals fall into those 3 categories. They all fall into the yellow, early stages or mixed progress, progressing on track, or completed. So as we look at your 5 goals, the first goal is about improving readiness. And it is the first aspect of that was Achieve Charleston, and it is progressing on track. The detail again was in your packets. The overarching readiness goal for K-12 is increasing the percentage of students who will meet career and college readiness. Now we're just saying it's early. It's very early to report any data on that. Acceleration schools, increase percentage of kindergarten students achieving readiness. Again, it's early in the process. The second goal is about successfully returning all students to in-person instruction. We've done a good job on that. We gave ourselves a mixed progress primarily because we don't know yet whether the interventions that we are providing are really targeted to address the academic and social-emotional needs of those students. We've just completed the first 9 weeks, and our schools are working hard to provide some interventions. We don't know yet whether we have exactly the right resources targeted well for the students who need them. The third goal is progressing on track. It's about attracting and keeping a talented staff. Our HR division did a tremendous job. We opened this school year with only 25 vacancies in a district this size, and that's pretty much unheard of across the nation. So they've done a great job with that. The next goal is about the building program. One aspect of it has been completely met. The next aspect is progressing on track. And then finally, the 5th goal is about communication. One aspect is progressing on track. The one that has to do with engaging stakeholders face-to-face, of course, is in the early stages. We're hoping the falling COVID rates will really help us be able to begin convening community meetings in ways that will be meaningful to parents who are providing input. The next thing we want to do is really get clear about our priorities. So in the picture here, we see a slide that Mr. Kennedy actually provided for us recently in cabinet. It was our realization that while we have, in business terms, one product line or one key customer, and that's our students, it's unclear. We don't have integrated resources. We've not integrated all of our resources in a steady and discernible way to support students. So we have all these different things going on. And as we move forward, planning the budget for next year and looking at the ESSER 2 and 3 funds, on the next slide, we want to make sure that we are identifying as our number one priority, improving life options for children of color and poverty. This doesn't mean we won't continue to address needs of all the children in our system, but clearly this group of students is not thriving. We want to note that this document is illustrative. We're beginning to build it out. We're looking at 5 main areas. The first 2 have to do with the core academic areas that are essential. The middle column has to do with talent. Under that column, we would certainly point out that we want to focus on having very strong teachers at our high need schools. And we want our teachers and principals to have a sense of well-being, self-confidence, and collective efficacy. The fact that together they have the resources and the skills they need to get the job done. 2 things we haven't talked a whole lot about are student well-being, how we know that our students are actually feeling as though they belong, there's someone to go to when they need help, that they're getting the support they need, and that the people care and believe in them, care about them and believe in them. So we've listed several things in that column. And the final column, we've called it this time parent satisfaction. To what extent do parents feel as though we are serving their children well? If we get down to next to the last box in that column, we talk about engaging parents in school decisions. That's something we think we need to focus on in November as we come into the board meeting next week. We'd like to talk a little bit more about that and see if we can get some active engagement of parents in the communities starting either in December or the first of the year, particularly around the schools that, as tonight's speaker discussed, need to have an opportunity to rethink the way they do business. So that is a key priority as we move forward. And then finally, under Superintendent's Report, we wanted to share our early thinking about addressing the educator concerns. We've all heard from various teacher groups, from Teachers of the Year to Kitchen Cabinet of Teachers to the CTA survey. We've heard it from our parents' cabinet, our principals' cabinet, that teachers simply don't have enough time to get the work done. So at this time, we're just generally saying we're working on the feasibility of giving some early dismissal days to teachers so they have more time to collaborate. The work is just more difficult. The challenges are exacerbated by COVID. Children came back to school further apart. The gaps are wider than ever before. And many students have simply lost the sense of how to come to school. They've lost a lot of ability to self-regulate, and that's creating a lot of stress and disruption for everyone who's trying to support those students and to teach all the other children in the classroom at the same time. So we know that Thanksgiving week, we are going to recoup some e-learning days. We'll be back with a recommendation for a calendar modification so that in February, March, and April, there will be e-learning days, which will give teachers an opportunity to get more work completed at school and to collaborate with one another in planning the kinds of interventions and responses students need. Difficult to implement the new curriculum. This impacts some schools more than others, but Ms. Belcher is meeting with teacher representatives from those schools that are most impacted to review and recommend some adjustments. The classroom disruptions and discipline issues, again, impact some schools more than others. And although there is already a standing committee that works to give feedback on the disciplinary procedures in place, the progressive discipline plan, there will be another attempt to specifically target those schools that our own survey results show that teachers feel that disciplinary practices that we have in place are not effective. There are too many assessments this year. We're at risk of really driving unproductive and unhealthy stress over pushing so hard on achievement test results at a time when people are simply trying to recover and regroup. So Ms. Belcher again is going to take a look along with Ms. Roberts at the number of assessments that we are giving and what's really useful, what's not. The state added some additional assessment requirements at the same time that we were trying to get more targeted in our assessments, and the result has been too many assessments. Finally, the Safe Schools training, I don't think board members have to complete it, but it's many hours of sitting in front of a computer, watching the videos and answering the questions. And as those of us who take it year after year after year will be very relieved that Ms. Pinckney Reese and her team members are going to review what is absolutely essential and whether or not some of us who've taken these tests, these courses multiple times, can simply take the test. And then finally, we want to mention supporting school leaders. This has been a most stressful time. We don't talk about it very much because we're tough and we're resilient. We're strong. We respond as you would expect us all to respond as professionals. But our building leaders especially have been through a lot of distress this year. So we want to take a moment to acknowledge that and to thank our principals as well as our teachers and other staff, and to assure everyone we're going to make adjustments in any way that we can to keep focused on the priority, but to let work that is not well-timed to put in place this year wait a bit until we can stabilize some. So that concludes the superintendent's report. There was a lot of everything rolled up in that, but we wanted to just sort of bring you up to date on where we are and what our thinking is about next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Postlewaite. We will go around. Reverend Mack, do you have any questions? Okay, Dr. French.
Yes, I had a couple follow-up on the COVID update.
Mhm.
So just want to make sure I understand that when a student's not wearing a face mask, that could impact whether or not they get quarantined. So it would be important for students and their parents to know that if you're not wearing a face mask and you have an exposure to a close contact, you're more likely to have to undergo quarantine if you aren't wearing a mask. Is that?
That statement is correct. If you're not wearing a face mask, you are more likely to have to quarantine.
Right. And then you mentioned booster shots for staff. Are you also offering opportunities for unvaccinated staff to go ahead and get vaccinated?
Mr. Brody?
No, we have not, Dr. French. There are still plenty of availability in the communities, and whenever we have those opportunities presented to us, we put those into the updates to the schools. So,
Okay.
so the staffs know when and where the opportunities are.
Okay, as long as there's continuing opportunities,
Yes, ma'am.
that's good. And I did just have one question about the disruption, where you're talking about trying to handle disruption of discipline. And I do know that, yes, in some schools, the discipline issues are within the school or sometimes not handled as well as the teachers might like. But I'm also wondering, are you also going to review data that includes disruptions we've had from adults this year? Because that's been a very impactful issue for some of our schools.
Actually, when Ms. Coker reviewed the data, the data collection shows fewer disruptions this year than in previous years. But to your point, the kinds of disruptions that have occurred, whether they've occurred from youth or from adults, have been different in nature than many of those that have occurred in previous years. They've taken up a lot of time of staff here at the office and in schools. So we're trying to review the whole gamut of what kinds of supports or interventions or proactive strategies might have helped. And then what do we do once something has occurred? Because we are challenged.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure it was part of the review.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Darby.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coakley.
Good afternoon. I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Green. Ms. Herderick.
No questions.
Ms. Coates.
No questions.
I do just have a couple questions. One, Mr. Barowie, you had mentioned the increased quarantine time if we're not wearing masks. What were the I know there was a lot of things unsettled at the beginning of the year, but what were the compliance rates with quarantines before the mask mandate was put in place?
Not really sure I understand the question. Sorry.
So when we had to quarantine students for those longer periods of time, were we getting pushback, or were people actually observing the quarantine periods?
So to clarify, we actually, from last year, we decreased our quarantine period. Up until last year, we were quarantining for 14 days. We dropped that to 10, and we maintained that 10 throughout the process. So the length of quarantine hasn't changed since early last year. This entire school year, we've maintained 10 days quarantine. We've had a lot less kids quarantined because of the decrease in the number of cases over the last month. This past week, in fact, we've only quarantined 29 students during the entire week. So it has dropped considerably. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, though.
Yeah, I think you clarified for me. The statement that you made during your report was the number of people in quarantine will increase, not that the time period.
Correct.
Okay,
It
that's
would be
what I
the
was
number,
confused.
not the duration. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So if we don't have any more questions, we'll move on to the Strategic Education Committee. Ms. Hurd.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. We have 3 items on the strategic education agenda today. The first up is 4A, the focus on student achievement. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Roberts.
Good afternoon, and thank you for providing some time for us today so that we can discuss and share some of our results for the previous administration of 3 of our high school, college, and career ready placement exams: ACT, SAT, and advanced placement. ACT is taken during the 3rd year of high school and during the 12th grade year, if not taken previously. So students have a choice of whether they take ACT or SAT as their college entrance exam. And so in the next few slides, we're going to focus on the cohort results for the most recent 2021 graduating class, as well as trends over time. Okay, so ACT uses a 36-point scale where the composite shows an average of 4 subtests: English, reading, math, and science, and a composite of 20 indicates college readiness. So over the past 5 years of testing, CCSD has increased its overall performance on ACT. The district also exceeds the state in all 5 years of testing and exceeds the national average in 2020, and then meets the national average in 2021. In the most recent year's breakdown of average ACT composite by race and ethnicity for the district, state, and nation, CCSD outperforms the state and nation in its subgroup of white, Asian, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, and 2 or more races. CCSD also outperforms the state in its Hispanic and American Indian, Alaska Native subgroups. And the district, as well as the state, both perform below the national average in its Black African American subgroup in the most recent year of administration. Over the past 5 years, CCSD's Asian subgroup has exceeded all other subgroups and exceeded the nation, with the exception of 2020, where it's a mere 0.2 percentage points below the nation. While the state and nation have seen decreases over the past 5 years, CCSD's Black African American subgroup has remained relatively constant, with the exception of 2020, where CCSD not only exceeded the state average, but also had its highest average composite over 5 years of testing. While both the state and nation have seen decreases since 2017, our district's Hispanic and Latino subgroup has remained relatively constant as well, with the exception again of 2020, where the district had its highest average composite over the 5 years. While the state again remains fairly constant and the nation experienced decreases over the past 5 years, the district's subgroup of 2 or more races has actually shown increases over time. While the state also remained relatively constant, and again, the nation has experienced decreases in performance of its white subgroup population over the past 5 years, CCSD's white subgroup has increased since 2017 and continues to exceed the state and nation in all of the past 5 years of administration of this assessment. ACT has also established college and career readiness benchmarks to indicate the likelihood that students will be successful in corresponding college courses. These benchmarks predict students who meet them will have a 50% chance of earning a B or higher and a 75% chance of earning a C or higher in their college classes. So CCSD has increased over time the percentage of students that are meeting 3 to 4 of these college and career readiness benchmarks and has consistently outperformed the state all 5 years and outscored the nation in the past 2 years, indicating that a higher percentage of students are achieving college and career readiness in CCSD than in both the state and nation. And this again is based on this measure. On STEM benchmarks, or those that are related to those college and career readiness benchmarks that are related directly to science and math, CCSD has again steadily increased the percentage of students who are meeting these benchmarks over the past 5 years. And the district has consistently exceeded the state percentage and has caught up with and exceeded the nation in the past 2 years of testing. So like ACT, SAT is taken again during that 3rd year of high school and during the 12th grade year, if not taken previously. And like ACT, students have a choice of taking this assessment as their college entrance exam. So in the next few slides, we'll again review the cohort results for the most recent 2021 graduating class, and again, look at some trends over time. So SAT has 2 subtests, the evidence-based reading and writing and math, as well as an optional essay assessment. SAT's composite scale ranges from 400 to 1600 with a composite of 1020 indicating college readiness according to our state. So for the most recent year of SAT testing, CCSD exceeded the state and nation on the evidence-based reading and writing subtest, the math subtest, as well as the overall composite. The district's overall composite is also 48 points higher than the state and 24 points higher than the nation. CCSD also rose above the state by 23 points and the nation by 19 points on evidence-based reading, and 25 points above the state and 4 points above the nation on math. So for the 2021 graduating class, CCSD outperforms the state and nation in all students and in white, Asian, and American Indian Alaska Native subgroups. CCSD also outperforms the state in 2 or more races. Although the district does not outperform the state in this Hispanic Latino subgroup, the district does outperform the nation in the subgroup. Both CCSD and the state perform below the national average in the Black African American subgroups. So when looking at these trends over the past 5 years, while the state has decreased its performance in its Asian subgroup over time, the district has exceeded all subgroups. Their Asian population has exceeded all subgroups in 4 of the past 5 years of testing and experienced a significant increase in performance over time. The district's Black African American subgroup has decreased since the 2017 administration, but has shown improvement over the past 2 years with a 5-point increase in 2020 and a 9-point increase in 2021. The state and nation have also seen similar decreases over time in this subgroup. And although the state has seen the most significant decreases, the state did see an increase over the past 2 years as well. And although the nation decreased its performance over time, the nation also saw an increase in the most recent year. Although the district's Hispanic Latino subgroup has shown a decrease in performance over time, CCSD does outperform the state in 4 of the 5 years of administration and outperform the nation in all 5 years of administration for this subgroup. It's important to note that the state and nation have also seen decreases over time, while CCSD actually has seen increases. While CCSD's white subgroup exceeded the state and nation all the past 5 years, the white subgroup in the district, state, and nation all show an overall decrease over time, and the state is experiencing a more significant decrease than the rest of the nation or the district. So over the past 5 years of testing, CCSD's graduating class has consistently and significantly outperformed both the state and nation on average SAT composite, with the most recent year showing CCSD performing 48 points above the state and 24 points above the nation on overall SAT composite. In 2021, CCSD exceeded the state and nation in meeting SAT college and career readiness benchmarks on evidence-based reading and writing and math, as well as students meeting both of these benchmarks. This again indicates that a higher percentage of students are actually achieving college and career readiness in CCSD than they are in both the state and the nation. So AP exams are designed to measure how well a student has mastered content and skills of a specific AP course. AP courses are designed to align with course content that's taught at the college level. Students who receive passing scores of a 3 or a 4 or 5 could be eligible to receive college credit from their attending college or university based on their level of mastery indicated by these passing scores. So the district has consistently exceeded the nation in advanced placement passing rate. And over the past 5 years, CCSD has also exceeded the state in percent passing on AP exams. In the most recent administration, the district tested 116 more students, gave 178 more exams, and even with a slight decrease in the percent passing from the previous year, which is often expected when you increase the number of test takers and exams taken, CCSD with its 67.8% passing rate remains 10 percentage points above the state and 9.8 percentage points above the nation. Again, it's also important to note that the district actually tested more students and gave more AP exams in the past school year than it has in the past. So over the course of 5 years, CCSD's Asian subgroup has consistently outperformed all other subgroups in the percent of students with passing AP exams. In 2021, the district's percent of passing exams for its Asian subgroup was 3.3 percentage points above the state and 4.6 percentage points above the nation. White and 2 or more races subgroups outperform other subgroups with the exception of the Asian subgroup in all years, with the exception of 2018, where the Hispanic subgroup actually outperformed 2 or more races. CCSD's Hispanic or Latino subgroup has exceeded the state and nation in percent of passing exams within that subgroup over the past 3 years, with CCSD being 3.8 percentage points above the state and 14.4 percentage points above the nation in 2021. The district's 2 or more races subgroup exceeded the state and nation, the percent of passing exams within the 2 or more races subgroup over the past 3 years. And CCSD is performing 12 points above the state and 10.2 percentage points above the nation in the past year. The district's white subgroup also exceeded the state and nation, the percent of passing exams within a subgroup in the past 3 years. Again, with CCSD being 10.2 percentage points above the state and 13.1 percentage points above the nation in 2021. So though a substantial achievement gap remains for the Black African American subgroup, the district has shown an overall increase in the percent of passing exams in its Black African American subgroup over the past 5 years. And for the most recent year, 2021, the same population had a rate of passing exams with that exceeded both the state and the nation. So in summary, as has been our story, CCSD exhibits strong subgroup performance in its Asian and white subgroups on all of these assessments. CCSD, the state and nation, reveal achievement gaps for Hispanic, Latino, and Black African American subgroups. Over the most recent years, the district has seen some improvements in performance for its Black African American subgroup by exceeding the state and nation in its percent of passing AP exams within a subgroup, increasing the average composite score over the past 2 years on SAT, and having the highest composite over 5 years in the 2020 administration of ACT. The district has also seen improvements in its Hispanic Latino subgroup, where the district exceeds the nation in performance over the past 5 years of testing on SAT and outperforms the state in 4 of the 5 years on the same assessment. On ACT, while the state and nation have experienced decreases in performance in its Hispanic Latino population, the district has remained relatively constant on this assessment and performed above the state in the most recent administration and above both the state and nation in 2020 in the same subgroup. Overall trends for all students indicate that CCSD is outperforming the state and the nation on ACT, SAT, and AP, and in the percentage of students presenting as college and career ready based on all of these assessments. CCSD continues to work on its efforts to close those opportunity gaps for students through things like implementing a guaranteed viable ELA and math curriculum with embedded coaching supports in our elementary and middle schools, by providing for students who may not typically take AP and honors classes, supports like high dosage tutoring, such as Paper's online tutoring initiative, before, after, and during school day tutoring and enrichment opportunities so that students are equipped to access the rigorous curriculum successfully. And the district is also working to ensure more equitable access to rigorous coursework in our middle and high schools through talent initiatives like ACE or Achieving Charleston Excellence. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. We'll take questions now. Ms. Coates?
So thank you for that. The first thing I want to get clarity on is you said that students can take the ACT or the SAT.
Yes, ma'am.
So what we're looking at is the percentage of students who chose to take the ACT.
That is correct.
And I guess that doesn't give us a clear picture of the percentage of students achieving per se, because students can opt not to take it.
Students have an opportunity to take either one of those assessments, ACT or SAT. Parents and students are provided information by their schools so that they can make a choice as to which assessment they do take. Some students do choose to take both.
But they don't have to. So we're not looking at the entire graduating class of achievement.
Not the entire.
Okay. And I really would, I guess, because we're on the time limit, I think this would be a great presentation to present again, but from a standpoint of not how we do against everybody else, but how could we do better? I think I applaud any increase, but our gap is incredibly large, and you listed a whole series of supports, but I don't know that it's working. If the gap continues to remain that large, why do we continue to do these supports that continue not to work? And I also think that I mean, we have to look at these for what they are. Only 39% of the kids who took the ACT met a benchmark that says they'll get a B in that corresponding course in college. And that's, I mean, we need to look at that and acknowledge that. And likewise, when you go to the AP, I mean, we have up to 70% of kids that are sitting in AP courses not mastering the content, when you only have 30% that get the 3, 4, or 5. So I think maybe I would appreciate if we took this report and cut out the comparisons and looked at the real issues that for our, I'm looking at AP placement, AP test in 2021, and only 29% of the African-American students who took the course made 3, 4, or 5. And only 52% who took the course made 3, 4, or 5, which means there's a vast percentage of kids sitting in those courses that aren't mastering the skills. And I think that needs to kind of be looked at. Congratulations for beating the state. Great job with the nation data. And I applaud any increase, but I think we've got some real holes there that we probably need to pull out and talk about much more deeply.
Ms. Waters,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Reverend Mack.
So my only question, and thank you, Ms. Roberts, for your report. However, I guess my question is, how are we preparing these students that are taking the SAT and the ACT? Because we see, and I thank you for being transparent with the data, the consistency and the low number of scoring as far as Afro-Americans are concerned. And I guess my question is, I want to get a little deeper as to how, and this may be a question for Ms. Belcher or Dr. Postawait, how we're preparing students in preparation of taking these tests. And I know the answer may come back and say, well, they do the PSAT. I get that. But obviously, there must be other measures in place to be able to assist in increasing these numbers.
I appreciate the question, and I think it echoes Mrs. Boncote's question around the
Correct.
achievement gap and what we need to do.
Correct.
And there's a couple things. Like, one is the PSAT's value add as it does on the test itself. It gives a lot of very specific feedback on interventions that should be in place and things that particular student can do to shore up their scores. So making sure that we follow up on that, that's 1,000 times better than it used to be, and giving a roadmap for individual kids. And I'm calling that out so that parents can make sure to pay attention to that and work with the school on that particular plan that's outlined for the child. But the broader answer, Reverend Mack, is the same answer I'm giving on the acceleration schools and everything else. We've got to keep doing the work we're doing on improving early childhood, upping the rigor in the elementary school so that they're more prepared as they go into the middle school, upping the rigor and engagement in the middle school so we don't lose those kids and they stay on track. And then ensuring all kids have access to honors, rigorous courses so that they're more likely to be well prepared. So it's not one thing, it's a combination of all those things and staying the course in a consistent, high quality way so that the students who are in kindergarten right now at Mary Ford, the people in our jobs are not having these same conversations when they're at high school age.
Mm-hmm. So I get that that's the long range and preparation and getting kids to that point, and we'll see that over a course of time and years down the road. But however, we have students that's currently in the 9th grade right now, in the 10th grade right now, getting ready to take that PSAT. I mean, how are we using that data to help those kids be more readily prepared? I mean, is there any intervention in place beyond the PSAT, or is there any measures in place for teachers or parents to collaborate together to help that student to be more successful in taking that SAT or ACT?
I can chime in for a minute if you like. So Reverend Mack, board members, one of the things that we've looked at is in these schools where we've traditionally seen scholars struggle with SAT, ACT, AP courses, is that in looking at some of the funding that we have now, we've looked into a program that will provide tutoring after hours for a lot of those high-level rigorous courses, because what we do realize that a lot of these kids are coming from working families and may not have access to any type of tutoring centers after school or parents that can assist them. So we're in a partnership with a program called Paper Tutoring, and that's the premise of this, is we're looking at those kids who we know are in honors levels classes, or even in some classes at high school where they may want to matriculate into AP, or currently in AP classes, provide that extra support 24/7. In a number of different languages. So that's one of the things innovative and new that we're doing right now. And ironically, we just got the approval on last week for that to start, but schools have been made aware of that program. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do differently to make sure we're beefing up the skills for those kids so they can be successful, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Darby?
Can before Ms. Darby start, can we make sure that when we get the update report that that's included to see how that's progressing, so we'll know how to track that? Please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Hedrick.
No worries. Ms. Darby?
Yeah, I would just say good information. I probably would echo what Cindy said about how can we look at, improvements and closing that gap. So, but good information. Thank you.
Ms. Coakley, I see your hand. I'm just going around the boardroom. and I'll get to you shortly. Dr. Frazier?
Yes, and I understand that we have been placing a lot of emphasis on comparing our data within the state and the nation. And I'd like to say that I'd like to see what we're doing and how we're going to approach the huge disparity gap between our Black and brown students and white students.
Dr. French?
Yes, I think it is going to be really important to understand if the percentages are really different among the different demographic groups that are taking AP, that are taking SAT and ACT. But I also, I noticed that on the AP testing, it does seem like the percentages are a little bit higher for performance than on the ACT. I'm not seeing the same comparison on the SAT. And so that is that not translating, or is that a different, maybe a more self-selected group of kids that's taking AP that's maybe more motivated, for instance, in studying? And if the students aren't getting the instruction they need all along, and if we're not intervening at middle school now, for instance, for 10th graders and 11th graders, in a few years, it's also still a problem. We know that the reading gap is part of that issue for all of the testing. So are there interventions in the middle school level as well that are, is it all going to be based on tutoring, making students spend extra time, or are they going to get different instruction that's going to help them better?
Did you want to answer, Dr. Williams, or do you want me to?
You can go ahead.
Well, I think one of the actions that the board has taken that's been really helpful prior to this point is we've moved more of our honors courses and access to gifted and talented programs earlier, which gives those students who have an interest in AP more of an access question. So that's a big deal to ensure that kids have a readiness, the middle school level, in terms of honors readiness to go into an AP level course. So they have the prerequisites. I would also say that the effort to make sure that along the way that the AP, that we're paying attention to those results in order to intervene if the course isn't delivering on the promise. So that which courses are actually resulting in kids passing at the 3, 4, and 5 level, and ensuring that we're learning from those courses and spreading it more broadly. What those teachers are doing that might differentiate the courses where we're not seeing the same level of success. Like that, particularly, I know that Ms. Haynes is working with the team at Burke a lot on making sure that AP results are attaining the potential that they imagine. So that's also something that we're paying attention to.
Ms. Green? Ms. Coakley?
Good afternoon. I just wanted to, so thank you for the presentation and listening to everything, but I kind of want to echo what everybody else said. It's always good to see things increase, but it was just kind of, heart-wrenching to know that African-American people are always, in the bottom, half. So how do we get there? How do we figure that part out? Like Reverend Mack asked, supports for the children in the 9th and 10th grade. What do we have more, other than just the tutoring? But also, like Dr. French said, are we giving it to them before we get to 9th and 10th grade? And if we're giving it to them in middle school, what is it that it exactly looks like? Also, I keep hearing the word rigorous. What do we mean by rigorous? If our children aren't already learning and we feel like they're not gaining something, then why do we keep offering rigorous things to them at a point where they're not quite capable, or either giving it to them without the supports that are necessary? Rigorous, I don't mind, but if we're going to give it to them, what kind of supports are we actually giving, not just the students, but actually the parents, to make sure that this stuff is not getting this hard on them in 9th and 10th grade, and then just trying to shove tutoring into them to make sure that they're getting it. And then when we give it to them, we don't want to give them the supports and say, okay, we're giving it to them, now let's take it back. How can we make sure that we're supporting our students all through, and what do those supports actually look like?
So I think Dr. Williams and Ms. Belcher alluded to a few of those practices that we're currently putting in place. Although it will take some time, the shoring up of that viable and guaranteed curriculum for ELA and math in our earlier grades will make a difference. Once we're able to really have that strong curriculum in place, providing those enrichment opportunities is a lot easier because your core is solid and firm, and students are going to get all of the grade level supports that they need. In addition, as students increase or progress through high school, providing opportunities for students to take the honors courses so that they can get the materials that they need and the content and skills that they need in order to be able to access AP courses is very important. College Board also, just as a side note, one of the things that College Board tries to remind us all of is the fact that just by taking an AP course, students are better off because they are exposed to a level of curriculum and content and skills that is far beyond what they would see in a regular classroom. And students, it's research proven that students will be more successful in college just based on being able to be exposed to that curriculum. Just a side note.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. We will now move on to section 4B, achieving readiness. Dr. Williams.
I'm ready. Great day, everyone. Great day, Reverend Dr. Eric Mack, Board Chair, Ms. Courtney Waters, Vice Chair, Board members, Dr. Postlewaite. We'd like to thank you all so much for giving us an opportunity today to have two of our middle schools share the state of their schools, to include their successes, their areas of opportunities, and the strategies they're going to put in place to address those areas of opportunities. So we have with us here today two amazing principals, and Principal Maite Porter from the CE North Campus and Principal Kevin Smith from the CE South Campus. We're going to start with Ms. Porter, and they're going to give you a 5-minute presentation each, and then we're going to conclude with 10 minutes of questions that you may ask. So let's welcome them, and without further ado, we'll get started.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Good afternoon. At CE Williams North, our overall goal is to increase readiness levels of all scholars in our building. In order to do this, our main focus areas are using data to improve instructional practices and solidifying practices that address the social emotional learning for our scholars, which in turn create a more positive learning environment. I will delve a bit deeper into these areas and give more specifics about the overarching strategies as part of this presentation. For the 2020-2021 school year, which is the data that you see here, we saw some growth in math from our fall to spring MAP testing scores. We are especially proud of the work we put into our social emotional learning and PBIS programs. As a result, we saw a significant decrease in the number of office referrals to the previous year for our 6th grade learners. And to add to this, hot off the press, our data this year doesn't look too bad either. It's pretty awesome. Our discipline data is looking really good. Last year was a year of immense change nationally, but especially for middle schoolers in West Ashley. We had 5 different times that groups of students entered the building for in-person learning throughout the year. We spent a considerable amount of time and energy building and maintaining positive relationships. Last spring, we met with each elementary school to conduct vertical articulation meetings to ensure that we knew each of our rising 6th graders. Over the summer, we developed a strategic plan to ensure that all learners were placed into a learning pod that was conducive to learning and with students from different elementary schools and neighborhoods in an effort to diversify not only our campus, but also each one of our classrooms. Being fully transparent, I must say that initially the transition of West Ashley Middle School of the merge was a bit tough on everyone. Due to the pandemic and circumstances that were out of everyone's control, we realized that we have a considerable amount of ground to cover in order to catch up our 6th graders, both academically and socially. I am proud to say that over the last 14 months, we've taken tremendous steps to create and nurture a culture of growth in our building. We've merged 2 middle schools and created an inclusive space for our 6th graders coming to us from 6 vastly different elementary school environments. We are consistently increasing outcomes in reading and mathematics with targeted intervention supports for students scoring does not meet and approaching on SE ready. We started the beginning of the school year specifically targeting students who struggled through the pandemic with virtual learning. After the students took the fall MAP test, we adjusted our in-school math and reading intervention programs to include students from the 1st through the 25th percentile. We started our after-school tutoring program, providing targeted support and instruction to students in the 26th to the 40th percentile. Cultivating a growth mindset. Students setting and tracking their own data using data trackers. We have an agenda that we give every student at the beginning of the year. And in this agenda, we have both a PBIS for behavior tracker, and we also have a map and benchmark tracker where students are learning to track their own data through their notebooks that they carry with them every day. We hope that this will be used to take home and continue the communication with parents back and forth. We are focusing on students' involvement and accountability in owning their own data through the use of data trackers and PBS online rewards. Creating a safe, culturally responsive learning environment. Through strategic master scheduling, we created learning pods, teaming, a flex period, and after-school clubs. In addition, we created 2 new related arts classes in order to provide safe spaces for teachers to work with learners on social skills and social emotional learning in smaller group settings. Next slide. Closing, I would like to say, although we do not know what the future holds for our 6th grade concept, we are confident that we are changing the trajectory for many of our young learners by providing opportunity and access to high quality learning opportunities and social emotional support. On an added note, I'd love to have you all come out and visit. We'd love for you all to see what's going on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you. My name is Kevin Smith, and I'm the principal of CE Middle School South Campus, where we serve the 7th and 8th graders of West Ashley. At our school, we are focusing on the readiness of our learners by doing the following things as our main focus areas. Designing instruction to engage students at the cognitive level of the state standards, strengthening interventions by streamlining our MTSS multi-tier systems of support team processes to meet the needs of students rapidly, as well as providing students with social emotional supports. And so you'll hear me talk a little bit more about that as I go into my presentation. And so some of our points of pride, we see, and we also are looking at our spring 2021 data, as I talk about data. Some of our points of pride, though, are a wide range of course offerings for our students. That includes geometry honors, algebra 1 honors, English 1 honors. We have a variety of what we call encore, some people call them exploratory courses as well. We also have opportunities for students to engage in both math and reading acceleration. Two other points of pride include our data. Seventh grade reading score showed that 58%, so almost 60% of our students based on NWEA, which is where we get our math data, our students scoring at average or above, with almost 40% of them scoring at high, average to high. For our eighth graders in reading as well, over 60% of those students based on their percentile band are scoring at average or above, with almost 40% of them scoring at high, average to high, excuse me. Now, the data we have to own, and this is our data as well. Unfortunately, when we look at our math scores for the same year, we only see 45% of our seventh graders and only 50% of our eighth graders by that same measure scoring at average or above. We also, as well at our school, as well as you see in our district and in our state and our nation, unfortunately experience performance gaps, where we see those disparities amongst our groups, most specifically with our African-American students scoring not doing as well as some of their counterparts. And we also know that growth in reading and math have to be accelerated, because we know that several students were not in person for instruction for at least 1.5 years. On our next slide, we see some of the impact on our student outcomes. So first, we see literacy and numeracy needing to be embedded across all of our courses. We have to accelerate the development of basic skills and fill academic gaps. We will be able to do that through adaptive software. Again, those acceleration courses, some people call them intervention. We like to say acceleration. And we were able to now have 2 teachers who can provide math acceleration for our 8th graders. Still 1 teacher providing those for both 7th and 8th, for 7th graders as well. And we do the same for reading. We have reading acceleration for both 7th and 8th graders. We also know that the instructional design focus has to be on increasing student engagement in tasks at the depth of knowledge 2 level or above. So there was a question about what do we mean by rigor and what does that look like? So at the school level, when we see the state assessments, we know that SC Ready test students mostly at a depth of knowledge 2, at least for those questions. And depth of knowledge 2 includes questions such as asking students to identify and summarize, describe, or solve multi-step problems. So if that has to happen in the classroom, in daily instruction, as we prepare them to be able to engage in SC Ready and other assessments, so that they have those wide range of opportunities as they continue to matriculate into 8th grade and high school. And we also know that our professional learning communities have to ensure that our instructional decisions are data informed. And so we're doing that through our work with leverage leadership that the district has provided for us to help us streamline our professional learning communities, where teachers are meeting to look at students' academic performance and figure out ways that instruction can either continue to move them or accelerate them into their learning. So some of our promising initiatives include our ASAP, we call it ASAP, is After School Academic Partners. That's happening at the school level, and also Saturday Academy. This is our 2nd year having been designated a Title I school, so we receive funds for Title I from the federal government now, which allows us the opportunity to extend our school day for targeted students. Next, Lunch Learning Center, LLC, is what you would hear us talk about. LLC is where we have students in our school, unfortunately, who are not doing well even while they're in person. So that's an opportunity for a 40-minute period of time. Rather than those students going to lunch and recess, those students who we've targeted as a small group they will get their lunch. Of course, they'll be able to eat, but we need to get them caught up. And so they would work with their teachers during that time so that we don't have to allow them to continue to slide further and further behind on their schoolwork. So that's what LLC is. And then during our whatever I need period, WIN period, that's a 25-minute period that's throughout the day for several of our, on our bell schedule. And during that time, students are working on adaptive software. That's also where our students, our teachers are delivering the 2nd step social emotional curriculum. But during the time that they're doing adaptive software, teachers are pulling those students and having those one-on-one conferences with them for about 5 to 7 minutes until they can get through a cycle. Usually that cycle will take 2 to 3 weeks. They continue to do that with those students. That also helps us not only try to keep students on track. When we looked at our panorama survey, we realized that students said that they did not have really good connections with their teachers. And then we can talk about why that might be from last year with a lot of students in person or not in person, student virtual. And then of course, these masks and things like that, of course, that we have to experience. So we want to really try to help continue to overcome that barrier that we experience. And so in saying all of that, as we conclude, we know that we have to create a school culture that has high expectations, provides high levels of support, and engage students in curricular and extracurricular activities that get them excited about school. And I think we cannot understate the need to get students excited about school again. More than ever, we must be relentlessly focused on student learning while we grow to meet the challenges that we are experiencing for the sake of our children. What you see on up there is a collage, a montage, so it's a collage of some of the images around our school, things that we have been able to start doing this year so that we can, again, get students excited, not only about learning, but also excited to come to school each and every single day. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present.
Thank you both so much. That was fantastic. We appreciate all you do for our students and families. We will take questions now. Ms. Coates?
So I guess my biggest question would be, first off, for both of you, the parts about the promising initiatives are just absolutely amazing. And Mr. Smith, I love yours. Yours are just astounding. 70% of the kids, sixth graders last year, did not show growth. And while we realize a lot of that's COVID, did anybody go back and compare that to the number of sixth graders in D10 in the 18-19 school year? I mean, did we have 100% growing in 18-19 and then all of a sudden, so where are, I mean, I see that and I understand COVID, but 70% of our kids not growing is not really good.
Not good at all. And again, that's data that we have to own. To answer your question, did I go back and do a comparison? The answer to that is no. Let me also say that it would be very difficult for us to do some comparison. Of course, we can both do it. Ms. Porter wasn't here. Last year was her first year in our district. And before that, last year was her second year in the district. But her first year in the district, she was at West Ashley Middle School and I was a CE lady. So going back and doing those comparisons is a little bit more difficult because the schools were even in a different configuration. But to answer your question, and really without a doubt, no, that's not good.
So then I guess my second question is, what kind of improvements in those numbers would we see if you came back this time next year? For the end of 2022, do you think you're going to be above 39% of the sixth graders showing growth? Or in Mr. Smith, in your school, will you think your percentages go up?
Oh, I can definitely answer that question. We are confident that our numbers will be way better than that based on having all of our students in person from day one. That's huge. We had 80 students that started at the beginning of the year last year. And our last group of students, we had about 100 that came in February. So that was we were one of those schools that was kind of really 50-50. And we just kept moving and shaking and rocking and adjusting all year long with our teachers and our students. So we are confident that our scores will be better this year.
When's winter map for y'all?
Our winter's in January.
January, thank you.
Ms. Waters?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Herter. Ms. Porter, in your impact on student outcomes section, your number 3, you talked about creating a safe, culturally responsive environment. Can you talk about what that looks like in practice?
Sure. Approximately 90% of our teachers are trained in capturing kids' hearts. We also have about 46%, I believe, that were trained in restorative practices at this point. And that is a goal of ours, to have 100% of our faculty that's willing to go through that training. And they all seem very eager and wanting to have that training just to support the things they're already doing. If you walk through my building right now, you'll see restorative circles going on. We have people that are coming to visit just to see those great things that are happening, not just for the social emotional learning, but we have teachers that are extending that as a practice in their classroom to review materials in a social studies class, or I pop in and I'll see math, a beach ball going across the room, and just really interactive. So I'm confident that these changes, these little changes and tweaks that we're making are going to have a great impact. We're seeing it now. I just had our data pulled this morning. We had, I believe, I want to say it was 67 referrals first quarter. And now we're, I think, 92 total for the entire year, which is huge for a middle school. And I can tell you on one hand, the amount of altercations or hit, strike, punch, those that we've had in comparison to other years. Even last year, it was a much larger number. So we're really seeing the benefits paying off now at this point.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for all your work and attention to that specifically.
Reverend Mack.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Porter and Mr. Williams. So Ms. Waters, I was going to touch on Ms. Porter and Mr. Williams with a quick question, but Ms. Porter, since you've already answered part of it, that's great. So I'll go to Mr. Williams. Tell me about, walk me through one of those promising initiative. And actually the 1, 2, and 3, I mean, I like all three of them, but I tell you what, walk me through number 3, the student conferences during the whatever I need win period. And the reason I'm asking that question because I heard you say something about the student and the teacher bonding together or connecting with one another, which is critical and important, I believe, in a learning environment. But tell me about that win period.
So win period is a lot of people have flex periods. A lot of people have like a 30-minute to 40-minute. For us, it just kind of worked at about 27 minutes. During that time, it's a time where essentially it's called academic intervention on the student schedule, but it's called WIN because it's an opportunity for students during that time where they're not being graded, but they're able to do the adaptive software. On Wednesdays, we do the second step delivery of the lessons. We track when teachers are getting those completed. So that's the social emotional piece. But as they're working on Alex, as they're working on any other adaptive software getting caught up. So essentially during the class, while students are working independently, the teacher would say, hey, can you come here and let's sit down at my desk? And then they would have that 5 to 7 minute conference. So what we did was we created a few questions to be the leading questions to help the teachers get started. Because we know some people honestly have a little bit more of an ability to have those one-on-one conversations and they'll do it very organically. And some people need a good question starter with students. So that's what that looks like. Teachers have a binder where they should be tracking that conversation with the students. And so, like I said, on every 2 to 3 week cycle, they should have seen every student and then continue to do that cycle. It's just to give that student some face time with an adult so that they can tell them something they may not have the opportunity to say, or they may not say, can you wait till after class? So that's what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that make sure I answer your question.
It did. So I guess I'm trying to gather too, and within that win period, it gives that teacher an opportunity to have a more in-depth conversation with that student should they may need additional service, maybe mental health or anything that may be going on with them outside. So it just gives them an opportunity to really explore different avenues and to be able to assist them in areas that they may need help in. Am I correct with that?
That is correct, but I also want to just add another layer, which I didn't do in the time frame that we initially had. The other layer of that is I have 3 school counselors and they are amazing. And what they have been doing is what they call minute meetings. Unfortunately, those meetings actually take about 15 to 20 minutes. So what they have been doing is meeting with every student on their caseload as well. And so not only do they have the WIN conferences with the teacher, but our school counselors are also meeting with the students to make sure they have some face time. And then we told our teachers and our students how they can actually request a school counselor. And so they actually use a Google form where the students have access to it. When they need to see a counselor, they fill out that form, it populates to the school counselor, they are alerted and they make time to go get that student to have those one-on-one conferences with them.
Right.
So that's just kind of some of the layers that we can try to respond more rapidly to our students' needs.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Darby.
No questions. Good info.
Dr. Frazier.
Yes, Mr. Williams, in owning the data, I noticed that you presented the percentages in your spring 2021 math scores, but when you came down to the ethnic subgroup data, we didn't see any percentages, and it just only shows that there's a significant performance disparity. Is there a way that we can get that information?
Absolutely. That's on NWEA's. I mean, I don't have it with me right now, but I could easily access it. I didn't put it in there because I could go very deeply into it, but I can tell you this. And just again, I'll be very, very honest. With where we see our African-American students scoring and where we see some of their counterparts scoring, it's not even about the comparison. Let me be very clear. It's not about the comparison of a subgroup against a subgroup. We know that where our African-American students are scoring is not acceptable. And so what we all have to do, not only as practitioners, but also in some cases researchers, where we try to figure out what's happening. We could talk about The Knowledge Gap by Natalie Wexler, a book that was provided to us. where I shared with my teachers, if you don't understand these words and you're asked to read a reading passage and you've never been exposed to them, you're going to have a very difficult time. I would say that to answer your question about data, I can tell you that sometimes it's a 50 percentile difference between where we see our highest subgroup scoring and where we see our African-American subgroup scoring. The question is, why are our African-American students scoring where they are, knowing that some of those African-American students are in the higher levels? So every Black student is not underperforming. As a group, Black students are underperforming. Why? And that's when we have to become curious and we have to become practitioners who are trying things that we haven't either tried before or keep doing things that we've seen have promise. So to answer your question, the answer is yes, I can get that data for you. It's accessible through NWEA. And no, it's not acceptable. But yes, we're going to do something about it. Now, I don't know if everything that we do is going to work, but I can tell you that we have to do the work to see what works.
Okay, and I guess my second question to you is, when you send us that data, could you just let us know what you're doing at the school level to mitigate those differences?
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much.
And if you don't mind, if I can just say this last thing, because our work ultimately, and I'll just say this to you, Dr. Frazier, that as we look at our students who are underperforming, those same initiatives that we have been looking at to address students who are underperforming, that net catches our African-American students. You know what I mean? It's not that we say we're going to just try to work for the Black students, but when we look at our students who are underperforming, a lot of those students are Black. They're not all Black. And so, yes, we definitely will share that with you, but I want to also say that some of those initiatives, like if we target students to come to our after-school academic partners, unfortunately, a lot of those students will be Black based on the data that we see work that they are producing right now, or we are producing right now. So yes, ma'am.
Dr. French?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of questions because a lot of people have asked them already, but I just wanted to say that the presentations that you've given and a couple that we've gotten from schools recently really show how innovative our education leaders are, and we greatly appreciate that. And I encourage you that whenever you feel like there's a barrier to your being able to implement your ideas, you come to the district and say, what do you need? How can we work on that? Because that's part of what we want to make sure isn't holding you up.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
This-
Thank you for your presentation.
Ms. Coakley?
I was just going to echo what everybody else said. Courtney actually hit the first question that I had. So thank you very much for all that you're trying to do as far as, we're reaching that diversity and inclusion there. I love the presentation and I love what we're doing with the 3 counselors and how we're reaching out to these children. And just like Dr. French said, if there's ever a barrier that you feel like you're running into as far as implementing something that you feel like is going to work, don't ever be afraid to come to us. And thank you very much. And I will be visiting you guys soon. I promise. I will be over there visiting you guys soon.
I just have one final question. Has it, in your opinion, been beneficial to have the 6th grade separated from the 7th and 8th grade?
I'll answer as well.
Okay.
Absolutely. Just to go back again, we have 6 different feeder schools coming from different places in West Ashley, some very affluent, some very Title I. And I'm having the opportunity to bring all of the students into one campus. We're not just teaching them the reading, writing, arithmetics, right? We're teaching them life. We're teaching them how to get along with people that don't look like them, people that may not act like them, but we're all the same. We're one person, right? We're just one, we're humans. And so we're teaching that. We're giving them space, and we're explicitly teaching things throughout the day in our lessons through social emotional learning. But just everything that we do is about whole child and teaching children these concepts. In addition to all the things that we said already, we have 15 teachers that are on our campus right now that are currently in the University of South Carolina cohort, and they're earning their master's of education, a master's degree in education with a multicultural context. So they're really in the work. They're researchers, like Mr. Smith said, they're delving in what's working. Their current class that they're taking right now is teaching African-American students. So they're really delving in, and so they're right in it. And I'm so proud of them. I'm proud of our school and the work that we're putting in. So absolutely, sixth grade. It's been a wonderful thing. Thank you.
And I'll say this, having been at C.E. Williams when we were a 6th, 7th, 8th grade school, and loved it, and loved sixth graders, I do. Knowing that what the intention, excuse me, of having these campuses separated to provide all students in West Ashley the same and equitable opportunities has been accomplished. That there's no, I want to go to that school, I want to go to this school. That has been accomplished. And it does provide us a little bit more opportunity to hone in on being much more responsive to middle level adolescents in a way that we weren't able to do before. Now, once we get through COVID and continue to go through that hurdle, it's been a bit challenging to merge two schools, move into a new building, and have about 5 first days of school last year. All of those things were challenging, but I do see how this is going to be quite beneficial for the students in West Ashley.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
Ms. Herdrick?
Yes.
This is a picture. We made copies and we'll pass it out to board members in a moment. But this is what the attendance lines in West Ashley used to look like. All of the students who lived in the area that's brown went to this red dot school. All of the students who lived in this area that's blue crossed this area and went to the blue dot school. And so we want you to see what that attendance area used to look like before the board made the decision to at least pilot the schools in the current configuration. So Dr. Williams, if you would help make sure each board member gets a copy, I would really appreciate it, because the new board members would not have seen that chart. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Thanks so much again. We look forward to visiting. Great. The last thing up on the strategic education agenda is the compliance plan for communication with English language learners. Ms. Reese, are you leading that conversation, or? Ms. Taylor? Thank you.
Actually, Dr. Taylor is going to introduce the concept.
Dr. Taylor.
Thank you so much. Ms. Patrick, we presented a report to the board at the last meeting, and of course, you have the compliance plan in your packet. So I would, along with Ms. Rush, if there are any questions, we can take them. We did get one question, and all the board members have a response at their table. So if there are questions, we will respond. If there are none, then we ask that you do what you do.
Dr. Taylor. Do you have any additional questions?
Can I make a motion to approve?
Yeah, second. Oh, before we vote, can I just think?
I'm sorry, ask if there's any questions.
Oh, well, you have to ask after the motion,
Okay.
yeah, but I was wondering, and maybe, I'm sorry, Ms. Rush, is she here?
She is here.
The compliance plan looks really well thought out, and I appreciate you answering my question. I'm also looking forward to what we're going to do above and beyond, and I hope that you can come back at some point and give us more information about that, because it shouldn't just be compliance, but to go all out, I hope.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
I just would like to be able to have you come back soon and tell us about what you're going to do above and beyond compliance. Sorry.
Yes, definitely. We will gladly do that.
Any additional questions? That motion passes. Ms. Waters, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Harderick. Next, we'll have the Audit and Finance Committee, Ms. Green.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. We have 3 action items and 4 information items. The information is available to you, and if you have any questions about it, just let us know. Otherwise, we will pick them up for a vote at our next meeting. Turn it back over to you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Okay, so next we have Dr. French.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. So we have on our agenda the policy IHBHE, Schools of Innovation. This is a recommendation from the Ad Hoc Committee on Schools of Innovation. I was the chair, Lauren Herderick and Courtney Waters were also on that committee. And we've brought this, we know that this is a rather detailed policy. We just wanted to explain that the changes in the law were rather complicated, and there's a lot of information that we were able to research about the waiver application process at the state board level that we felt really helped to inform this. So we did try to incorporate some of the language in the law and in that waiver form to help people understand better what this policy will help our schools do. And I think one thing that we all came to this with was that a school of innovation doesn't necessarily have to be the entire school changing everything. It can be a program within the school. Some of the ideas that you heard today are very innovative, but if they had run up against an issue like, we need more time for our teachers to work on this, they are already overworked, how can we approach that? Then the district can help them determine if they need a state waiver or if they can do it through another means. So this attempts to address these issues, and once we have a motion, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded by Ms. Herderick and, I'm sorry, who second? Ms. Waters?
It was Ms. Coates.
Ms. Coates. So I'm going to read the motion, move to approve policy IHBHE, Schools of Innovation, and exhibit IHBHE-E with the understanding that administrative rule IHBHE-AR is under development and will come back to the ad hoc committee for review and recommendation to the board. And that last part of the motion is unusual. Administrative rules are written by staff and generally are not subject to a vote from the board. However, in this case, the ad hoc committee was always very interested in a lot of the details of what will happen with the administrative rule. We actually had, took some things out of policy that we realized were more appropriate in the administrative rule. So we wanted a chance to look at that, make sure we felt that like it aligns with the policy and the law since everything's so complicated. So I hope that's clear. So I guess I'll go around. Ms. Herderick, do you have any questions?
No question.
Ms. Coakley?
No questions.
Ms. Coates?
So I guess my only question is what happens if the 6th grade academy at C. Williams, which appears to be doing an extraordinary job with their social, emotional, and mental health learning, why would they be required to add another aspect of that in order to get an innovation waiver from the district?
So we felt like that anytime that a school wants to apply for innovation, that they need to show that they're also addressing academic progress and improvements for students. We felt that, social, emotional, physical education, mental health education are all very valuable components of meeting the needs of the whole child and will impact academic progress. So we did feel like it needs to be both, because one of the issues that we are having for many of our students is academic outcomes.
No. So the academics are given, that's what the law was written for, and we just want to add that they add another aspect.
Right. Is that all? Does that answer your question? Okay, Ms. Waters?
No questions.
Reverend Mack?
No questions.
Ms. Darby?
No questions.
Dr. Frazier?
No.
And, I just, there's one thing I wanted to make clear. Another thing that was really interesting to us is that the waiver form that the SCA Department of Ed developed does require signature from the board, obviously, because we have to approve it with a 2/3 vote, signature from the principal and from the School Improvement Council chair. And so we really wanted to emphasize that piece of it because we know that school improvement councils are where all of the school community can really participate. And I felt like it was important to emphasize you need to develop this program or plan for a school of innovation with the school community. So, and the school leadership, obviously. So, thank you. If there are any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And I think I need a point of clarification, maybe from the parliamentarian. I was discussing with legal that we may need a couple of small edits in the legal references section. Would we need that to come back for a vote at the board meeting next week for first reading? Or okay. All right, thank you. All right, the motion passes with 8 yeas and 1 nay. And I'll return the meeting back to Ms. Waters.
Thank you, Dr. French. Next, we'll move on to section 6, which is other business. First, we'll have Reverend Mack with an update to the board appointees to the ESSER 3 advisory team.
Yes. So at the last board meeting, I indicated that I will have 3 names to report today. I do have 1 out of the 3 to report, just waiting on the other 2 for confirmation in making sure that there's no conflict of interest there. But one of the names out of the 3 is Raynique Sias, has agreed and does not have any conflicts.
Thank you, Reverend Mack. Next, we'll have the legislative update, Ms. Taylor. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. For our legislative update, I want to provide a brief overview of the 2021 post-session report that we provided to you. Just to give you an overview of not only what just passed in this past legislative session, but the bills that are pending. And in consultation with Dr. Taylor and Dr. Postlewaite, we wanted to make sure you understand, you had a description of the bill and the requirements to make sure the district is in compliance with those laws. If you go through pages 1 through 5, you will see that the key bills that were passed this year and the description, of course, when a bill becomes a law, it's enacting a law and it has an act number. Of course, you have the sponsor of that bill and the school district requirements. Page 6 of the post-session report. Each year, the most important piece of legislation that passes the General Assembly is the General Appropriation Bill, the budget. So what we did provide here was the key funding items that were in the budget this past year. Also, there are several pages on provisos. Provisos are generally temporary. That also has the act of law. Of course, the mask mandate prohibition was, there was a lot of discussion on that, but there's other key provisos that are passed. For example, on page 16, 1.35 of the proviso was reporting of student report cards and the cumulative GPAs for grades 9 to 12. That's another key proviso. 1.38. There's a proviso that requires that prohibits the Department of Education and school districts from selling advertisements for on school buses. So there are numerous provisos in the general appropriation bill that carry over from year to year, from time to time. Sometimes those are amended, and we certainly keep our eyes on those as well. On page 33 of the closed session report, we're in the second year of a 2-year session. So those bills, they maintain their status, whether they're in committee or on the House or Senate floor, and they also have a chance of passage of this year as well. And so as you read it on page 34 throughout the rest of our report, you will see those key pieces of legislation that have a chance of passing this year. And of course, is an importance to you. The House has already selected their dates for pre-filing of legislation, which is November 10th through the 17th. We'll know later, maybe this next couple of weeks, about when the Senate pre-filings are going to be. And what we'll do analysis of those bills and bring them back to your legislative committee, so you'll be ready for the next legislative session to determine whether or not you want to be you remain neutral on some of these bills, or you want to actively participate in the lobbying process. This week on November 11th, the Sacramento School Board is having their legislative preview webinar on November 10th. And of course, you know about the Legislative Advocacy Conference here in Charleston on December 4th through the 5th. But that's our post-session report, which I think is important, that you know what was enacted into law, and which, of course, over the course of the session, there was a lot of discussion about those bills, and of course, what's pending in General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. We will turn it over to questions. I'll go around. Well, Reverend Mack, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, Ms. Darby?
No questions.
Thank you. Dr. Frazier?
No.
Dr. French, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I have appreciated the format that you put your reports in. It's made it really a helpful resource tool to look for what has already passed, what's pending, and it actually helped our work on the ad hoc committee.
Thank you.
Ms. Green?
No questions.
Ms. Herderick?
No questions.
Ms. Coakley?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Coates?
Generally, there's not a lot of pre-file mid-session, but I'm kind of hearing that there's some things ramping up, particularly in education. Have you heard that what do you expect pre-filing to be? Do you expect there to be a lot?
I mean, it varies. I mean, I think there's enough number of bills out there now that were part of a major legislative package.
Right, where they
cannot
pulled them
pass.
all apart and we're doing them one by one.
Right.
And I've also talked to people on the Senate side that said there's not a lot of time to take on anything else. I don't think we should expect any heavy action there.
I agree with you on that point. I think there's enough on the agenda for us to say grace over, as they say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our consent agenda items. Items 4C and 5B, which were both.
I'd like to keep 5B off of the consent agenda, please.
Is it because of the update?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we, Mr. Parliamentarian, is it fine to just do that, or do we need to vote for that to happen?
So
To remove that from the
what to
consent
be
agenda?
on, right?
I don't think it was unanimous, so it would require a vote to go into potential.
It wasn't unanimous? Okay.
Oh, that's
Okay.
right. You're right. It wasn't unanimous, so it won't go to consent anyway. That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, no, I thought it was unanimous.
I was,
4C
I should have
is,
thought of that.
Yeah, no, I got it. Okay, that's fine. All right, so 4C is on the consent agenda and 5B will be tabled.
No, not tabled, but it'll be first reading at next board meeting.
Okay. Mhm. All right, so the upcoming meetings, November 8th, we just finished. November 15th, we do have a board meeting, and then just for a point of reference, December 13th will be a combined meeting where we'll do the committee of the whole and the regular board meeting on the same day. Thank you. All right, we're adjourned.
Our special call meeting is tentatively set for 3:30. So if we can, it is 2:45 now, if we can be prepared. So it is.
It says, and I'm talking in capitals, this is an estimated time.
It is 2:45 now. We can resume in 15 minutes. 3 o'clock sharp. I will begin at 3, please. Everyone, if you could please be back and ready to go at 3. Okay, we're gonna call our special call board meeting to order. Entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Ms. Waters. Is there a second?
Second.
Probably moved in the second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Is Ms. Darby and Ms. Coakley voting electronic? That we're voting electronic. Okay. All right. Okay, Ms. Waters and, I'm sorry, Ms. Darby, Ms. Coakley.
I voted electronically.
Okay, Ms. Coakley,
I have to remind her,
she's not on.
she might have to
Okay.
remind her to go out and come back in.
All right. Okay,
Oh, we didn't pop up. Yes.
Did you?
Oh,
Oh, I might be in the other meeting.
Me too. And I tried to, you can't just refresh it.
Ms. Green, how do you
All the way
vote?
Back out.
Okay. Let me go down. I'm so sorry, y'all.
she said yes.
Reverend Magnus is connecting right now.
Okay, thank you.
I get confused by that every time.
The thing right here, just the refreshing.
Yeah,
We good?
yeah.
Yes, we're good.
Oh, it popped up as soon as I got it. I said it popped up as soon as I got it.
Okay. Are we missing anyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Coakley, are you on?
Yes, sir, I'm here. I'm in the car right line. I got disconnected. I apologize.
That's all right. Are you, we're just voting on the adoption of the agenda. Have you had an opportunity to log in to see the agenda?
My computer logged out, but yay.
Okay. All right, she voted yes. All right, entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you.
Maggie, have we started back? I can't hear anything.
No, ma'am, not yet.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to reconvene back into open session. Item 4A, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
What's the motion?
Approve the facility lease agreement of the Lincoln campus to Lincoln Regional Center.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Are there any questions? Hearing none. Ask that you please cast your vote. That motion passes. Item 4B, I'm sorry.
I've got a,
Hang on. Who's?
I've got a motion, Reverend Mack, sorry.
Okay, as in reference to item 4A?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, it's in reference to 4B.
Okay, all right. All right, after we make this motion here, let me just indicate what we're about to do here. Item 4B is the face mask requirement. Mr. Harvey, you were saying something?
I have a motion. Reverend Mack, I'd like to move to have the mask mandate expire on Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. Continue offering vaccines to eligible students and follow policy ADD as to when the mask mandate needs to go into effect, period.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Dr. Frazier. Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Dr. Frazier to, if I'm reading it correctly, I'll wait until Julie, you want to go ahead and post it? Can you read that motion?
Yes. Motion to have the mask mandate expire on Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. Continue offering vaccines to eligible students and follow policy ADD as to when the mask mandate needs to go into effect.
Okay, moved by Ms. Darby, second by Dr. Frazier. Are there any questions? Ms. Green?
No, I changed my mind.
Change your mind? Okay, all right. Are there any questions?
So
Ms. Coates?
as it's written, it says that, so do we want to say that the board will reconvene? Or do we just want to say the policy, which reads?
I
think-
believe it's in the policy.
Yeah, my intent would be that, as we just talked about, that if the numbers got high or the policy, the DHEC numbers are medium or high, that the superintendent would contact the board and the board would convene.
We need that embedded into the minutes. If we do, it needs to be embedded into the motion.
Ms. Darby,
Yeah.
do you mind adding that to your motion?
No, I don't mind. We could just add at the end of, as to when the mask mandate needs to go into effect. Or maybe we could say, and follow policy ADD as to when the mask mandate needs to go into effect, period. The board will convene as needed, or the board will convene, because I don't want to say it's just on the medium high, because our numbers might be high. Can we just say the board will convene as needed at the end of that sentence?
When appropriate. When appropriate.
When appropriate, better, when appropriate, that's what I said.
All right, and we'll just stand by so that we can hear the motion in its entirety. Ms. Erickson?
To have the mask mandate expire on Wednesday, November 10th, 2021, offering vaccines to eligible students that follow policy ADD as to when the mask mandate needs to go into effect. The board will convene when appropriate.
All right, everyone clear on the motion? All right, hearing the motion, it has been properly moved by Ms. Darby, second by Dr. Frazier. Hearing no further questions, we ask that you please cast your vote. I'm sorry, Dr. French?
Yes, I just want to make it clear that we'll still continue to strongly encourage face masks, and that face masks, wearing a face mask can reduce your chances of needing to quarantine.
That's just a comment, not part of the motion.
Correct.
Thank you. All right. Ask that you please cast your vote. Dr. French?
I have voted.
Okay, that motion passes 8-1. Entertain a motion for an adjournment. This meeting now